The moment Bryce Halden turned off his fake brick Zoom background, I knew he wasn't here to talk roadmap. There he was, leaning back in his high-backed leather chair, like he'd earned gravity. Top button undone, chin lifted just a little too high, voice soaked in the smug polish of a man who thought synergy was a management philosophy and not a filler word for power plays. Iriah. We've been reviewing our cultural alignment across departments, he began, and I almost smiled. Not even 5 seconds in, and already he was calling it a review, not a decision, not a move, just alignment. I said nothing. He kept going, eyes flicking to something off-screen, probably the script HR prepped for him. While we've always appreciated your significant contributions, we're pivoting toward a leaner, more agile DevOps leadership framework, one that empowers growth from within. Translation: we hired a 22-year-old intern with half a certification and a Medium blog. He cleared his throat. So we've decided to sunset your role effective immediately. Jet Winslow will be stepping in on your initiatives. Jet. The same kid who once asked me if rebooting the staging cluster was as easy as unplugging the cloud. He'd shadowed me for 6 weeks, spent most of it trying to customize his terminal theme. I blinked slowly. Just once. The window split as HR joined Kara, or something equally soft. She had that HR tone like lukewarm chamomile, all flattening vowels and practiced empathy. Iria will be sending your severance details by end of day. We do ask that you refrain from accessing company resources or code repositories going forward. You'll receive a follow-up about your exit checklist. Her words slid past me like elevator music. I just nodded once and said noted. There was no farewell speech. No mention of the infrastructure I had built: 6 environments, 18 container groups, 3 identity protocols, all knit together with my fingerprints. They hadn't even asked for a handoff. I closed the laptop, sat still for a moment, then reached for the Post-it I kept by my monitor. I'd written it a year ago, back when Bryce was still someone else's problem. They don't know what they're standing on. I took the note, folded it in half, and tucked it into the vault folder where the real story lived, encrypted, time-stamped, untouched. And beneath my kitchen sink, the key waited quietly. The espresso machine still sputtered when I turned it on, no matter how many times I'd cleaned the thing. I didn't bother today. I reached past it behind the base plate and slid out the old USB drive taped in place with fading electrical tape. The label was worn but legible, node0.key. This wasn't revenge. Not really. When I built the identity stack for Nebula Core, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about security. I was thinking about what happens when someone like Bryce Halden shows up with a title, a grin, and just enough technical knowledge to be dangerous. People like him always assumed systems are magic that runs on belief and caffeine. I knew better. From the start, I designed everything to be modular, layered, and sealed behind an encryption architecture that required validation at every step. Not just a password or a token stored in the cloud, a real root of trust system generated offline once and never connected to any network. No backups, no third-party syncs, no copies. Only one key, only one person who ever touched it. Me. There had been conversations. Warnings even. Months ago, I'd outlined the risks of centralizing authentication without multi-stage redundancy. I'd flagged the danger of handing admin rights to DevOps juniors for convenience. Every note, every flag ignored. Bryce had laughed when I mentioned security tokens, and checksum chains told me I was thinking like a bunker builder. I was. And now the bunker was sealed. The access pathways were still there, beautiful, elegant, recursive, but locked so tight no one could even see where they began, unless they already knew. The irony was, if they'd asked, just asked, I would have written a transition doc, walked someone through the handoff. But they didn't ask. They discarded, assumed I was replaceable. I opened my secure vault, uploaded a fresh copy of the architecture diagram, labeled it Nebula Core Schema, final.pdf and timestamped it to the second. I didn't need to touch anything inside their systems. I just needed to stop catching the falling bricks. And the first brick was already mid-air. The email came in at 10:43 a.m. Subject: weird issue. WPAR test suite. LOL from Jet Winslow. I hovered over it before clicking. Hey, Ms. Castell. Hope you're well. Just trying to push the test suite to staging and getting this bizarre kernel signature thing. Not sure if I broke something, LOL. Any chance you remember how this part works? There it was, the first ping. I didn't respond. I didn't even open it fully. Just let the preview sit on the side of the screen like a ghost trying to remember the shape of its body. Instead, I opened my offline vault and created a new folder. I'll call Logs, Nebula, Core, Contact, Attempts. Inside it, I started a new file. These are well-known Jet Test Suite Ping MD log the timestamp, pasted the subject line, wrote unclear request, no logs attached, tone casual, doesn't know what broke or where, saved, closed. Outside, a robin was pecking at the windowsill planter. Brooklyn in March had that weird edge, half thaw, half threat. People walking around like the winter was done lying to them. But I didn't feel any shift. The cold hadn't left me. It was a strange kind of stillness, the kind you feel when something's already cracked but hasn't fallen yet. Jet had no idea what he'd inherited. A stack of containerized microservices balanced on a logic chain that authenticated every API call against a key it couldn't see unless the validation thread passed 3 recursive checks. It wasn't a wall, it was a gate with no handle. And now he was trying to open it with a smiley face and a lucky guess. I reached for my coffee cold by now and took a sip anyway. In some ways, I didn't blame him. He didn't know what he was standing on. He didn't build it. He didn't name the layers or trace the fault lines. He was just told, make it work. And the people who told him that, they were already booking flights for the investor demo. By Friday, the emails started stacking up. First from Jet, then from someone in product, then someone I'd never even met from marketing. CCing everyone like urgency alone would fix the problem. Test deployments weren't passing. Jenkins logs returned empty files. Staging containers spun endlessly before collapsing into timeout loops. The system wasn't crashing exactly. It was decaying. Quietly, elegantly. The kind of failure you don't notice until you've promised a room full of investors that everything's already working. Jet's second message was longer. More words, fewer emojis. Iria, sorry to bother you again. Just wondering if maybe the build pipeline config is stored somewhere else. I checked the standard repo, but everything keeps throwing undefined access errors. Really appreciate anything you can remember. I didn't answer. Not because I hated him. I didn't. He was just a kid, dropped into the middle of a forest with a lighter and a handful of damp matches. The truth was, I hadn't broken anything. I hadn't even touched the system since they revoked my credentials. I'd just stopped catching the falling bricks, and there had always been bricks. Little things I'd patched silently over the years. Legacy modules that needed hand-holding. Service dependencies with idiosyncrasies only I understood. 1,000 quiet interventions that never made it into Jira tickets or sprint reviews. They thought the system ran because they funded it, because they branded it. But it ran because I got up at 3 a.m. when a token rotation failed in Jakarta, because I wrote scripts to catch errors before dashboards even noticed. And now, without me, without the person quietly threading those seams together day after day, it was starting to come apart. I stared at my inbox, 5 new messages, 2 from Jet, 1 with the subject line urgent auth chain acting weird. I opened my archive log and typed a new line, contact attempt. 4. Still no logs, still no clue. Then I closed the window. Outside, the clouds were starting to gather. The subject line was sterile request for confirmation. Post-employment system status. It came from someone in legal I'd never heard of with a title like Compliance Strategy Liaison. the kind of role invented specifically to avoid accountability. The body was worse. We have reason to believe certain components of the system you managed may not be functioning as expected. We request written confirmation that all proprietary systems were left in operable condition upon your departure. Failure to respond may result in further action. Further action. I sat with the email open for a full 5 minutes rereading that last line. Not because it worried me it didn't, but because of how precisely it revealed their panic. Legal doesn't threaten unless the walls are already smoking. I clicked reply. Typed 6 words, you had every chance to listen. Then I opened my archive and pulled the document they never read. Nebula Core, Handoff Architecture, Full Export V3 Final, PDF 40 pages, indexed, time-stamped, cross-referenced. I attached it without comment, letting it speak for itself. Appendix E was highlighted in red. Do not reassign AM privileges to a single role. Doing so eliminates redundancy and creates a single point of failure in all authentication logic. Fatal error risk 1010. They had done exactly that. I knew it wasn't Jet's call. Bryce had probably insisted it would streamline deployment because the man treated CI/CD like a magic trick. Press button code goes live. They wanted me to say I sabotaged something. Wanted me to admit guilt they could weaponize. But there was nothing to confess. Everything I'd built was intact. Every warning, every note, every escape hatch marked and mapped. They ignored it. All I did was walk away. And now they wanted someone to blame. I hit send, closed my laptop, and turned to the window just as the wind picked up. Across the street, the scaffolding on the new condo tower creaked, as if the steel itself knew it had been rushed. The next message came at 2:12 a.m. Subject, please help body. I'm sorry to message you again. Everything's breaking. I don't know what I'm doing. They keep asking me to fix it, but I don't even know what it is. Please. There were no emojis this time. No LOL, no awkward exclamation points, just raw panic typed with fingers that were probably trembling. I read it twice, then a third time. The desperation had finally broken through the startup polish, and what was left was just a kid, underpaid, overwhelmed, and cornered. The kind of person they throw into the fire so they don't have to admit it's burning. It would have been easy to hate him, to mock his cluelessness. He'd stepped into my role without hesitation, posted on LinkedIn like he'd been promoted, not used. Wore the hoodie, smiled for the camera. But the anger I expected wasn't there. I didn't pity him because he was innocent. He wasn't. He'd accepted the seat without questioning why it was suddenly vacant, but he didn't deserve this. Not the silence. Not the blame. He was just disposable. Like I had been until I wasn't. I opened a draft. Typed slowly. Jet, this wasn't yours to fix. You were handed a system no one explained, built by people they didn't bother to understand. I paused. My fingers hovered. The cursor blinked in rhythm with my breath. Then I hit delete. Not out of cruelty, not out of revenge, just clarity. Because if I replied now, they'd call it grace. If I stayed silent, maybe they'd have to sit in it. Look at what they'd built and what they'd broken. And it wasn't him I wanted to watch squirm. It was Bryce. It was the culture that celebrated chaos and punished precision. The company that thought charisma could substitute for comprehension. I closed the draft and moved his message into the vault under a new label, Contact Attempt Number 7, Emotional Collapse. No logs attached. Then I checked the calendar. Demo day was 4 days away. By Monday, I stopped counting the emails. They weren't even coherent anymore. Half instructions, half pleas. Internal teams were spinning in circles. Product blamed engineering. Engineering blamed infrastructure. Infrastructure was gone. Jet had gone quiet after his last message. Either someone told him to stop reaching out or he'd finally hit the wall. Maybe both. and Bryce still barking orders like posture alone could force the system to comply. I knew they were testing inputs, trying combinations, rewriting permissions they didn't understand. It wouldn't help. The core logic validated every session against a rotating authentication chain, a chain that self-sealed after 5 failed roots. It wasn't meant to punish, it was meant to protect. But intent doesn't matter when you hand a loaded system to someone playing guesswork with root access. I'd built a kill switch hidden deep in the lowest tier of the container hierarchy. If anyone tried to override the authentication sequence more than 5 times, the platform wouldn't crash. It would close permanently. At 3:08 p.m., a new log synced into my personal vault. Auth sequence failed attempt. January 6. Trigger unauthorized deployment push from non-root ID user Jew Winslow result lockdown protocol initiated. It had happened. They didn't even realize the 5th try had been their last chance. The 6th wasn't a warning. It was the line being crossed. I imagined Jet hunched over his terminal, watching the UI freeze, watching everything go gray. I imagined Bryce standing behind him, arms folded, waiting for the miracle that wasn't coming. They thought they could brute force trust. They thought the system was dumb code and duct tape. They never learned that trust once broken doesn't reboot. I archived the log with the others, labeled it clearly. System lockdown demo countdown 3 days. Then I leaned back, opened a fresh note, and typed just 2 words at the top: demo day. At 11:00 a.m. sharp, the livestream kicked off. Their feed opened with sweeping B-roll server racks, spinning globes, animated icons swirling in a dance of over-promised innovation. The future of cloud is now. The banner read, pulsing in a nauseating shade of teal. I didn't watch it live. I didn't need to. I already knew what was coming. Instead, I sat on my balcony coffee in hand, the late morning sun pushing its way across the concrete like it had something to prove. I let the warmth soak in. The only screen near me was my phone flipped face down. It buzzed at 11:06. From Priya, message, it's happening. They're live. I walked inside and opened the laptop purely out of curiosity, pulled up the feed. The CEO, some former marketing exec who never wrote a line of code, stood center stage in a blazer, 3 sizes too slim arms wide like a tech cult leader. Our platform is scalable, modular, future-proof. He declared, his teeth so white they looked photoshopped. Behind him, Jet stood at the demo station. His hands hovered above the keyboard. I could see the sweat glistening along his temple, the way he blinked like someone trying to slow down time. He clicked. The interface blinked to life. 1 second, maybe 2. Then the loading spinner froze. A delay, a flicker. And then it came. Fatal error, encrypted signature missing. System lockdown engaged. The screen dimmed to gray. Gasps, awkward shuffling. The CEO's expression dropped a full octave in real time. Bryce, partially visible off stage, turned corpse white. Jet looked like he was waiting for the ground to swallow him. I didn't smile. Not really, but I did sip my coffee. Then I opened my inbox, found Jet's final message from the night before, and moved my cursor to reply. I typed, "Your boss should have paid me what I was worth." Then I hit send and closed the tab just as the ripple effect began. The fallout arrived faster than I expected. By noon, the Slack leaks were spreading screenshots, snippets, someone's shaky screen recording of the demo imploding in real time. The chat scroll froze right after the lockdown message. Some investor's face, mid-recoil, became a meme before the hour was up. Then came the DMs. The first was from Lacey, a back-end dev who used to argue with me about whitespace conventions but always delivered clean code. Iria. "I'm sorry, we should have pushed back when they sidelined you. You were the backbone. We see that now." I didn't respond. I just copied it into a new document post-demo. Acknowledgements timestamped, filed. Then Dev, the junior who once shadowed me for a sprint, messaged with a simple line, "None of this works without you. Just wanted you to know." I archived it. It wasn't validation, it was late. But I accepted it anyway. Then Kyle's name popped into my inbox. Subject, please body. They're going to blame me. I didn't know what I was doing. No one told me how anything worked. I'm just an intern, Iria. Please, help me. I stared at it for a long time. He wasn't the one who pushed me out. He wasn't the one who ignored every flagged warning, every note, every meeting where I was told to trust leadership. He was just the one they handed my life's work to and told run. And maybe he thought he could. Maybe he believed what they told him, that systems are just switches and tech is just confidence in a hoodie. I didn't hate him, but I didn't know him either. I filed his message under final appeals, closed the folder, and stood. The last of the morning light had shifted to gold, and the air had gone still. In the quiet, I heard the phone buzz again, this time with a job offer. One I already knew I'd accept. But first there was one more thing I had to do before I let go for good. I never replied to Kyle. Instead, I packed my bag and boarded a morning flight to Boston window seat, no fanfare. My new team had already sent over the onboarding docs, the repo access, and my favorite detail, an agenda titled, "Let's Learn What Iria Built." No ninjas, no rock stars, no slogans, just quiet professionals asking real questions. The CTO met me in person at the office. He shook my hand, thanked me for coming, and introduced me to a small circle of engineers who actually read my sample code line by line. One of them even annotated it correctly. My new desk had dual monitors, a standing option, and a chair that didn't make my spine feel like a protest. When I flagged a permissions inconsistency in their onboarding flow, the team listened, fixed it, and thanked me before lunch. No defensiveness, no shrugging, just work. Mutual respect. Meanwhile, back in New York, Nebula Core was coming undone. The investors had started pulling out within 24 hours of the demo. Someone leaked internal logs to a journalist. A Medium post appeared under the title, "The Startup That Forgot Its Skeleton." Bryce deactivated his LinkedIn. Slack channels I once muted now buzzed with my name. Threads like, "Did anyone save Iria's old access notes? She warned us, didn't she? I heard she built the whole CI chain from scratch." Rumors filled the gaps where memory failed. I didn't correct them. I didn't leak anything. I didn't drag anyone. I didn't need to. When you've held the entire system together long enough, silence becomes its own kind of signature. At lunch, my new PM slid a notepad across the table with a single line. "What do you want to build next?" I looked around at the team, at the sunlight streaking across the glass, at the diagram I'd drawn that morning, that someone had already started implementing. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't being tolerated. I was being trusted. And as I looked down at my new badge, Iria Castell Principal Systems Architect, I thought of the chaos still unraveling without me, and I felt nothing but peace. You don't fire the architect and expect the building to stand.